If you are brand new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you are about to hear is going to live in your head for days. Stay with me. She is accused of being a danger to her own child. The video is 11 seconds long. 11 seconds of a woman with dark brown skin and a long purple braid kneeling over a small boy. In the glow of a single candle, her lips moving, her tattooed shoulder tilted toward the flame. By 6 in the morning, the clip has been screenshotted for 100,000 times. By 8, the comments are using words like cult and ritual and unfit. By 10, a caseworker is at the door of the apartment Aaliyah shares with her 8-year-old son Tayo. And by noon, Tayo is in a grey room with a stranger, while his mother sits at a kitchen table waiting to find out if she still has a country to be deported from. She does. The notice comes at 2 in the afternoon. Visa expired. Status unresolvable without intervention. Voluntary departure 72 hours. She reads it 3 times. The words do not change. She does not cry. She stopped crying when Tayo was born, made a decision in the hospital that she would not be a woman who fell apart, because falling apart was a luxury she could not afford then and has not been able to afford since. She has brown skin and a spiral tattoo on her right shoulder and expressive eyes that have seen too much. And she is 28 years old, and she is sitting in a kitchen in a city that has just decided to throw her away. And she is not crying. She is thinking. She is thinking about the candle. She lit it because Tayo had a fever, and the overhead light hurt his eyes. She was singing him a lullaby her grandmother taught her, a hymn from a language most people in this country cannot identify on a map. She had his hand in both of hers, and she was singing, and someone recorded it through the window and posted it and wrote the word satanic before the video had been live for 4 minutes. That is all that happened. That is the entirety of what was done to her. She is thinking about this when the elevator in the building's main hall opens with a sound she recognizes. Heavy, deliberate, the particular quality of footsteps that know they are never going to be questioned. She has heard those footsteps 20, maybe 30 times in 11 months. She knows who they belong to before the knock comes. She knows before she opens the door and finds him standing in it the way he always stands in doorways, like the doorway was built for him specifically, like the building adjusted itself to accommodate his arrival. Jae-hwan. He is in his 30s, and he is Korean, and he is built like someone who made a decision very young about what kind of body he would need for the life he intended to lead. Short-cropped black hair, the expensive dark suit worn with the ease of a man who has never owned a cheap thing, a powerful frame, a cold, calculating gaze that moves over every room he enters the way a security camera moves, recording everything, assigning value, finding exits. She has been married to him for 11 months. She has sat in a room with him perhaps 45 times. She knows his name and his power and the outline of the criminal empire he chairs from a penthouse she has visited twice and never felt welcome in. She knows almost nothing else. He does not say hello. He does not ask if she is all right. He walks past her into the kitchen the way men walk into rooms they own. And in a technical sense, he does own this one, because the lease is in the name of one of his holding companies, a fact she learned on month 3 and chose not to examine too closely. He sets his phone on the table. He plays the video. She watches her own face in the candlelight. They're moving fast, he says. He does not specify who. He does not have to. The detainer is filed. Your visa status has been unresolved for 6 months. A pause, precise and deliberate. I made a choice to leave it unresolved. She stares at him. You made a choice. Yes, my visa has been expired for 6 months, and you knew, and you left it that way. There were strategic considerations. My son is in a grey room 8 blocks from here, she says. Her voice does not shake. She is enormously proud of this and furious at herself for caring about it right now. He has been sitting there for 4 hours. He is 8 years old, and he is scared of thunderstorms, and he thinks his mother is in trouble. What strategic considerations require my visa to be expired when that happens? Jae-hwan looks at her. He looks at her the way he looks at everything, with the full weight of his calculation, the kind of attention that would feel like a compliment if it were not so obviously the same attention he gives a spreadsheet. She has dark brown skin and a bright purple braid and a body that makes rooms take notice, and a tattoo curling up her right shoulder that the internet has decided is evidence of something dark. She has full expressive eyes that right now are doing everything in their power not to show him how afraid she is. My family's charitable foundation hosts a gala in 12 days, he says. $240 million in commitments are expected. The mayor will attend. For major media outlets will have press presence. My family's competitors will be there, and they have spent the last 14 months trying to find an angle to use against me. He pauses. The angle they have been looking for is our marriage. They believe it is transactional. They believe you are a prop. If they can demonstrate that to the right people before the gala, the political cover I have spent 3 years building disappears. So you need me to look like a real wife, she says. I need you to perform at the gala. The silence that follows is so complete she can hear the ventilation system in the building. Perform, she says. Sing, he says. There was an act scheduled. They withdrew last week. The slot is open and I need it filled by someone whose presence at my family's event is unquestionable, whose connection to me is visible and legitimate, and whose appearance reframes the narrative about the video before it becomes something that cannot be reframed. He looks at her steadily. You have a voice. I need it. She thinks about Kieran, 8 years old in a grey room. She thinks about the deportation notice on the kitchen table. She thinks about 72 hours, which is 3 days, which is not very long. She thinks about a visa that has been expired for 6 months while her husband made strategic considerations. She thinks about the 11 months of separate floors and 45 conversations and a marriage that has been a transaction from the first signature on the first page of the first contract. You're telling me, she says, very slowly, that if I sing at your family's gala, you will fix a federal immigration violation and a child welfare investigation. I'm telling you that I have a legal team that can resolve both of those things, and that both of those things become resolvable when my wife is publicly and undeniably a cultural asset rather than a liability. He picks up his phone from the table. I'm also telling you that I cannot protect you or Tayo from what happens next if you decline. 72 hours from now you will be on a plane. Tayo will remain here under state supervision. Custody resolution, given your expired status, will take time. He says the word time the way other men say never. She stands very still. Her voice, the thing she has kept locked and private for 6 years, since before Tayo, since before the bad decisions and the wrong country, and the marriage contract in a lawyer's office she signed because the alternative was worse. Her voice is the one thing in her life that has never belonged to anyone else. Her grandmother said it came from God. Her mother said it came from suffering. She has never been entirely sure, only sure that it is hers, and that she has never let anyone weaponize it. She has never let anyone know it was there, and if I agree, she says, lawyers move, immigration resolved, investigation closed as unfounded. Tayo home within 72 hours of the performance. In writing, she says, he reaches into his jacket. He produces a document that is already printed, already prepared, already waiting, as though the answer was never a real question, and he knew before he knocked on her door what she was going to say. The paper is 4 pages. She signs the last page without reading the first 3. She will think about that later. She will think about it constantly. The Grand Meridian seats 800 people and smells like old money and fresh flowers and the kind of ambition that has learned to wear a tuxedo. Aaliyah stands in the wings in an emerald gown that Jae-won's assistant chose, with her purple braid coiled up and pinned with something that probably costs more than her monthly rent. And she watches 800 people take their seats. She has been briefed on the event, rehearsed the logistics, positioned like a chess piece on a board she does not fully see. She breathes. She has not sung for an audience in 6 years. The MC announces her name. The room shifts, curious and politely skeptical. The way rooms full of wealthy people receive the unknown. She walks into the light. She is 28 years old with dark brown skin and a spiral tattoo on her right shoulder, and a voice she has kept in a box for 6 years. And tonight is opening for the first time in front of 800 strangers. She opens her mouth. What comes out is not polished charity gala background music. It is not forgettable. It is not safe. What comes out is 6 years of silence, broken all at once. Her grandmother's hymns, and her mother's grief, and the particular specific love of a mother whose child is in danger. And underneath all of that a raw technical power that does not come from nowhere, there has been trained in a conservatory she left behind and in a private discipline she has maintained alone for years. The voice fills the room the way sound fills rooms when it has nowhere else to go and does not want to be anywhere else. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. One journalist at the press table puts her pen down and does not pick it back up. The silence after the last note lasts 3 full seconds. Then the room rises. All 800. The applause is the kind that happens when people are applauding for themselves, for being present at something they will describe for years. She looks for Jae-won. He is standing. He rose with the room, but his face is not the face of a man witnessing something unexpected. He is not surprised. He is not moved in the way the rest of the room is moved. He is looking at her the way someone looks at a mechanism that has just performed its function. With satisfaction. With the specific recognition of a person who has seen this before. Because he has. She understands in this moment, standing in the lights with 800 people applauding, that she did not surprise him tonight. She confirmed something he already knew. He knew about her voice before the gala, before the contract, before the deportation notice that pushed her into agreeing. He knew, and he built the entire machinery of this crisis around the specific knowledge that when he offered her a way out, she would take it, and the way out would require her to stand on this stage and give him exactly what he came to collect. Her blood goes cold under the lights. She smiles. The cameras are on her, but her hands at her sides are fists, and in her chest, underneath the voice that just moved a room full of dangerous people, something entirely new is taking shape. Not fear, not gratitude. Something older. Something that does not have a name yet, but feels like the first day of a war. She looks at him across the ballroom. He looks back. He already knows everything, she thinks. He knew before she did. He planned this. And the only question that matters now, the one she cannot stop hearing underneath the applause, the one that is going to keep her awake tonight and every night after this, is not how long he has known about her voice. The question is what else he already knows, and what else he has already decided to do with her. If this story already has you gripped, subscribe right now and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next. Drop a comment below and tell me, did you trust him from the start? Or did you know something was wrong? Share this with someone tonight. This is only the beginning. Chapter 2. She gets Tayo back on a Tuesday. He runs to her in the lobby of the social services building with his sneakers untied and his dinosaur backpack bouncing and his arms already open before he clears the door. And she catches him and holds him so hard he squeaks and tells her she is squeezing too much, and she does not let go. She presses her face into his hair and breathes him in. Soap and crayons, and the particular smell of a child who is fine, who is safe, who is not broken by the 3 days he spent in a grey room waiting for his mother to come back. She lets go only when she has to. The social worker hands her a folder. Case under review. No further action pending. She does not ask how that happened. She knows how it happened. She felt it happen from a stage in a ballroom while 800 people stood to their feet, and a man in a dark suit looked at her with eyes that held no surprise at all. She takes Tayo home to the penthouse. He rides the elevator with his face pressed to the glass wall watching the city drop away below them, and she stands behind him and watches the folder in her hands and thinks about fine print she did not read that night. After Tayo is asleep in the room that Jae-won's assistant furnished for a child, precisely, efficiently, the way the rest of the penthouse is furnished, as though a catalogue was consulted and warmth was left off the order. Aaliyah sits at the kitchen counter with the original contract in front of her and reads every word. She reads it twice. She reads it a third time. Then she puts it down very carefully, the way you put down something that might detonate. And she sits with what she has just understood. There is a clause on page 4, standard language, The lawyer would probably say, boilerplate. The kind of thing you miss when you are signing fast and a man is watching you, and your son is in a grey room 8 blocks away. The clause states that in the event of any action by either party, that results in measurable reputational damage to the Huan family name or affiliated business interests. A list that runs to 2 dense paragraphs, the custodial arrangement for any minor children connected to the household defaults immediately to the primary earner of record. Jae-hwan is the primary earner of record. She is the wife. She is the voice. She is the asset that just earned a standing ovation and for journalist bylines, and a reframing of the whole narrative around their marriage. And she is, according to page 4, one bad headline away from losing her son. She does not sleep. The weeks after the Gala move fast and wrong. There is a profile in a magazine she has never read. Full page photo, purple braid over one shoulder, spiral tattoo visible, headline, the voice behind the empire. She does not remember agreeing to the interview. She is told by Jae-won's PR director, a woman named Cassie who smiles in a way that never reaches her eyes, that the feature was arranged as part of the Family Foundation's media strategy. Aaliyah is part of the media strategy. Aaliyah is the media strategy. She understands this the way you understand that the house you are standing in is on fire, slowly at first, and then all at once. There are 2 more events. A fundraiser, a corporate dinner, where Jae-won needs his wife present, visible, warm, the kind of wife who makes a man look like he has a life outside of business. She performs at both. She stands beside him in photographs with her hand on his arm and her smile calibrated and her voice, when called upon, doing what it has always done, stopping rooms, moving people, making everyone in earshot feel something they cannot name. Tayo starts at a new school, a good school, private, one Jae-won arranged. His teacher sends home a note that says he is settling in beautifully. He makes a friend named Oscar. He brings home a drawing of a T-Rex that he puts on the refrigerator himself, without asking, because for the first time in his life he has a refrigerator that belongs to a home that might actually stay. Aaliyah looks at the T-Rex drawing every morning and thinks about page 4. She tries to go out. Not far, a coffee shop 2 blocks away, a bookstore, an afternoon with Tayo at the park. Each time, there is a man from Jae-won's security detail at a distance that is technically not following her, that is technically just coincidentally going the same direction. She mentions this to Jae-won once, at breakfast, the only meal they regularly occupy the same room for. He looks up from his phone. The situation is sensitive, he says, until the immigration case is formally resolved. Discretion is important. Discretion, she says, or control. He looks at her the way he sometimes does. That calculating stillness, that weighing of something she cannot see, those aren't mutually exclusive. She thinks about that for a long time. She finds out about the video leak on a Thursday. Not from Jae-won, from a woman named Ji-young, who is the wife of one of Jae-won's associates, and who has taken to visiting the penthouse in a way that Aaliyah has not yet decided is friendly or surveillance. Ji-young drinks tea and talks fast, and has this specific manner of someone who knows more than she says. And on this particular Thursday, she says something offhand, almost gentle, the way people say things they want you to hear, but cannot be seen to have told you. It was a strange thing, Ji Young says, turning her cup. The way that video went everywhere so fast. Usually things like that, someone private, no public profile, it might get a few thousand views. But 14 million overnight? Someone fed it to the algorithm. Someone with resources. She does not look at Aaliyah when she says it. Aaliyah looks at her hands on the kitchen counter. Someone with a reason, Ji Young says, and finishes her tea and leaves. Aaliyah sits alone in the kitchen for 47 minutes. She knows because she watches the clock. She sits with what Ji Young's words do to everything she thought she understood about the last 2 months of her life. About a video that went viral overnight. About a visa that expired 6 months ago and was left unresolved. About a man who showed up with a contract already printed, already knowing she would sign, already knowing what she would need to be offered to sign it. About a Gala performance slot that opened up 3 weeks before the crisis. About a man who looked at her from a center table with no surprise on his face. He built it, all of it. The crisis was manufactured. The deportation threat was real, but the urgency was constructed. The timing was arranged. And the video of her singing to her sick child in candlelight that 42 million people called a satanic ritual. That video was fed to the algorithm by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and why. She gets up. She goes to the room Jaewon uses as an office when he works from home. She opens the door without knocking. He is on a call. He looks up. She holds his eyes. "We need to talk," she says. He says something into the phone in Korean and ends the call. He does not look guilty. He does not look caught. He looks like a man who expected this conversation and chose the timing himself. "You leaked the video," she says. A silence. "You let my visa expire. You arranged the crisis. You had the contract already printed because you knew I would have no choice but to sign it." She is not shaking. She is surprised by that. She thought she would shake. Instead, she feels very clear, the way the air feels after a thunderstorm. "And you knew about my voice. You knew before we ever got in the same room." Jae-hwan leans back. He does not deny it. That is the worst part. He just looks at her with those calculating eyes and does not deny a single word. "Why?" she asks. "Because I needed what you have," he says, "and you were not going to give it to me voluntarily." She stands in the doorway of his office in the penthouse of a building he owns in a city she is technically not legally cleared to remain in, with her son asleep down the hall in a room he arranged, in a bed he purchased, and she understands with total clarity that she is not a wife. She is not even an asset. She is a resource he extracted from circumstances he engineered. She turns around and walks back to the kitchen. She does not say another word to him for 4 days. On the 5th day she tries to leave. Not the city, just the building. She packs a bag for herself and one for Tayo, calls a car service not connected to Jaewon's network, and walks to the elevator with her son's hand in her hand and her heart going very fast. The elevator does not move. She tries the lobby phone. Nothing. She tries her own phone, calls a friend, gets a message that the number is restricted. She has not paid her phone bill. She realizes her phone bill goes through a household account managed by Jaewon's office. She takes Tayo back to his room and tells him they are going to play a game where they stay inside today. He accepts this the way children accept things when they trust you completely, without question, with a confidence in you that costs them nothing because they do not yet understand the price of it. She goes back to the kitchen and opens her laptop. The magazine profile is up. The comments are 3,000 deep. People calling her voice a gift. People calling her a queen. People calling her everything except what she actually is, which is a woman in a penthouse that is also a cage, with a contract in her kitchen drawer that has page for in it, with a husband she cannot confront and cannot leave and does not fully understand. She starts to type, not an email, a document, everything she knows, everything Ji Young said, everything she found in the contract, everything she has noticed in 11 months of living adjacent to a criminal empire. She writes it. The way she sings, without stopping, without editing, following the truth wherever it leads. She is halfway through the 3rd paragraph when her phone buzzes. Not a call, a text, from a number she does not recognize. The text says, "Stop typing." He monitors the laptop. "Meet me at the east stairwell, 3rd floor. Come alone. Bring nothing." She stares at the screen. The sender ID is a letter, just one, a capital M. She does not know anyone whose name starts with M. She does not know anyone who has this number. She does not know if this is a trap or a rescue or something that is both at the same time, which in this household amounts to the same thing. She closes the laptop. She looks at Kieran's room. She goes to the east stairwell. The woman waiting for her is small and beautiful and 70 years old, with white hair cut sharp and eyes that hold the same calculating quality as Jaewon's, but where his coldness feels like a weapon pointed outward, hers feels like a weapon pointed at everything equally. She wears no jewelry except a single jade ring. She stands with her hands folded and her back straight, and the specific posture of a woman who has spent decades being the most dangerous person in every room she has entered. "You are smarter than I expected," the woman says. "My son underestimates you. That is his first mistake." She pauses. "I am his mother. My name is not important. What is important is that I have something you need, and you have something I need, and we do not have very much time." Aaliyah looks at this woman, at the jade ring, at the white hair, and the straight back, and the eyes that calculate everything. "What do you need from me?" Aaliyah says. The woman reaches into her jacket and produces a small drive. "I need you to give this to the right person," she says. This contains financial records connecting Jaewon's primary competitor, the man who has been trying to take this family apart for 3 years, to a series of criminal transactions. If this reaches the right investigator, his operations collapse. My son is safe. The family is safe. She holds the drive out. And you get your freedom. Real freedom. Papers. Citizenship. No clause on page 4. I will make sure of it personally. Aaliyah looks at the drive. She thinks about page 4. About the elevator that did not move. About 42 million views, and a manufactured crisis, and a man who does not deny what he has done. She thinks about Tayo's T-Rex drawing on the refrigerator. Who is the right investigator? She asks. The woman smiles for the first time. It does not improve her face. I will give you a name, she says. All you have to do is make the call. Aaliyah takes the drive. She will regret this too, but not for the reason she thinks. And if your heart is beating fast right now, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Hit that like button so more people find this story. Drop a comment and tell me, do you trust his mother? Because I promise you, the answer is going to wreck you. Share this with someone who can handle it. Chapter 3 is where everything breaks open. Chapter 3. The mother of Jaewon pours tea like a woman who has never been refused anything in her life. Her name is Choi Sun-hee, and she is 61 years old and looks 50. She sits across from Aaliyah in a private sitting room on the 14th floor of the family's main residence building with the stillness of a woman. Who chose this meeting, this furniture, and this angle of afternoon light deliberately? She wears ivory silk. Her hair is silver and precise. Her hands around the teacup have nails cut short, the hands of someone who works. Aaliyah sits across from her, a 28-year-old black woman. Dark brown skin, long purple braid over one shoulder, spiral tattoo on her right shoulder. Expressive eyes reading every flicker on the older woman's face. You sang beautifully, Sun-hee says. The mayor called my son this morning. 3 journalists have requested follow-up interviews. The investigation into Tayo's welfare has been officially reclassified as unfounded. She sets her cup down. You did everything that was asked of you. Tayo comes home tomorrow, Aaliyah says. It is not a question. It is the only sentence she has held onto for 72 hours, the one fixed point in a world rotating under her feet. She pictures her son, pale-skinned, black-haired, dark-eyed, the prominent black vein running up his small arm, his chilling knowing gaze that the internet decided was something sinister. Tayo comes home tomorrow, Sun-hee confirms. She looks at Aaliyah with something almost like warmth. You are stronger than I expected. Aaliyah holds her gaze. People keep being surprised by that. Sun-hee almost smiles. My son collects useful things. He always has, when he was 12. He kept a broken radio for 3 years because he said it had potential. When he was 24, he purchased a bankrupt textile company his entire board called worthless. A pause. He has a gift for seeing what other people overlook. He sees people the same way, Aaliyah says, as things with potential. Yes, Sun-hee says. Without flinching, he does. It is both his greatest strength and the thing that will eventually destroy him if something does not intervene. She looks at her tea. I have been waiting for someone to intervene for a very long time. Aaliyah goes still. She feels the shift in air pressure the way you feel a storm coming. Something changing in the room. Some signal that the conversation has arrived at the place it was always headed. She has spent 2 weeks in this family's orbit and learned to feel these shifts. The Hwans do not have casual conversations. Every sentence is placed. Every pause is deliberate. Sunhee did not invite Aaliyah here to congratulate her on her voice. Sunhee reaches into the sleeve of her ivory silk jacket, an old gesture, almost theatrical. The gesture of a woman who grew up in a different era, and produces a small silver drive. She sets it on the table between the teacups like something radioactive. His name is Victor Lim. She says he runs 3 competing operations out of Vancouver. For years he has been systematically dismantling my son's alliances in the Pacific region. 2 of Jae-won's partners have had accidents. One was deported on charges that were arranged. A federal investigation was opened against our family twice in 18 months. Both times the source traced back to Lim's legal team. Her voice is level and clinical. She is not telling a story. She is delivering a briefing. My son knows. He has known for 2 years. But Jae-won's response to threat is to go quiet and go deep. And he has gone so deep that Lim has started to move openly. Last month Lim contacted a senator. Next month he will contact the federal prosecutor who oversees organized crime in this district. Sunhee touches the drive. This contains everything. Financial records, communications. The name of the federal agent Lim has been paying for 3 years. Evidence sufficient to end Victor Lim permanently and expose his government connections. My son has spent 2 years building this file. She looks up at Aaliyah. He does not know I have a copy. Aaliyah picks up the drive. It is lighter than it should be. She turns it over in her brown fingers, the spiral tattoo curling up toward her right shoulder. Thinking about what kind of woman she is becoming in this family where every gift comes wrapped in. Why are you giving it to me? She asks. Because you have something my son does not, Sunhee says, folding her hands. Public trust. The journalists who covered the gala respect you. The mayor who shook your hand last week respects you. You are a young mother with a beautiful voice and a story about persecution. You are now, whether you intended it or not, a sympathetic public figure with access to media platforms my son could never approach directly. You won't need to leak it, Aaliyah says. Through the press. I want you to deliver it to a federal prosecutor named Grace Park. She has been building an independent case against Lim for 8 months. She needs a clean source, someone without criminal exposure, someone the defense cannot discredit as a mob plant. Sunhee's eyes do not move from Aaliyah's face. You would be a hero, Taeyo's mother, the woman who sang at the Hwan Gala and then, out of civic courage, broke open a federal case. A pause, and Jae-won would be protected. Lim's fall removes the threat. My son's empire consolidates. He would owe you something he does not know how to give anyone. Real gratitude. Real visibility. He'll know it was me, Aaliyah says. He will know someone acted. Sunhee says carefully. My son is brilliant but arrogant. He has blind spots. You are one of them, a small, precise smile. He did not expect you to be paying attention. That lands deep. The admission that Jae-won underestimated her. That Sunhee, at least, did not. I need to think, Aaliyah says. Take a day, Sunhee says. But not longer. Lim's meeting with the senator is in 5 days. Aaliyah pockets the drive and finishes her tea. At the door she turns back, because there is one thing she has to ask. The thing underneath all of it. The thing she has been circling since Sun He poured the first cup. Why do you want to protect him? She says. You're his mother, but this isn't what mothers do. You're not protecting him. You're repositioning assets. Sun He is quiet for a long moment. I built this family, she says finally. I kept it alive through 3 transitions of power, and to government investigations, and a period when my husband was in federal custody for 18 months. I made decisions my son does not know about and would not approve of, and I would make again without hesitation. I love my son the way generals love their best soldiers. Completely, strategically, and always with an eye on the field. She sets down her cup. Aaliyah nods. She leaves. She does not realize, walking to the elevator with a silver drive in her pocket, that she has just been told exactly who Sun He is. She did not listen carefully enough. She calls the prosecutor's office from a coffee shop 6 blocks away, using a phone bought with cash, because she has absorbed some of Jaewon's instincts while resisting everything else about him. Grace Park's assistant takes her name. 20 minutes later, Park herself is on the line, with the focused attention of a person who has been waiting for exactly this call. The meeting is arranged for the following morning. A federal building, a conference room. Aaliyah will come alone and will be, as Sun He designed her to be, a credible civilian source with no criminal exposure and a sympathetic public profile. She goes home. Tayo is not home yet. Tomorrow. They said tomorrow. And she makes dinner in the kitchen, where Jaewon once told her she had no choice. She eats alone at the counter, the drive in her hand, telling herself she is doing the right thing. She tells herself this several times. She almost believes it. Grace Park is 43, compact, and looks at Aaliyah across the conference room table with the eyes of someone who has heard many stories and disbelieves most of them. But she takes the drive and runs authentication. When the tech team delivers their read, something electric shifts behind Park's professional face. This is real, Park says. I know, Aaliyah says. Where did you get it? Aaliyah, dark brown skin, long purple braid, the spiral tattoo visible above her collar, keeps her voice even. From a source within the Hwan family who asked to remain unnamed. It is technically true and strategically incomplete. She is learning that is the only kind of truth that survives in this world. If this goes where I think it's going, Victor Lim will face significant legal exposure, Park says. Lim is not someone who accepts that quietly. I understand that, Aaliyah says. And the Hwan family. I understand that too. Park slides a document across the table. Full cooperation agreement. Immigration status resolved with prejudice. Tayo's custody situation permanently closed as unfounded. Full immunity from any federal inquiry related to the Hwan family's operations for 10 years. Everything Sun He promised, laid out in clean federal language. Aaliyah feels a relief so strong it is almost physical. She signs. She goes home. She is in the kitchen at 9 in the evening when her phone rings. An unknown number. She answers because the calls you do not recognize are the ones you cannot afford to miss. Mrs. Hwan. The voice is smooth and expensive. The voice of someone who learned English late and well. I understand you had a meeting today with a federal prosecutor. I want you to know I find that very interesting. I am aware of the origin of the material you provided, and I suspect your husband is not. Victor Lim. She does not speak. She keeps her breath even. She learned that from Jae-hwan. The stillness, the refusal to react. I'll be in touch, Lim says, and hangs up. She stands in the kitchen for a long time. Then her phone buzzes again. A news alert. Jae-hwan Choi-won, chairman of the Hwan Group conglomerate, has been taken into federal custody on a sealed indictment. His attorney has been contacted. The drive she handed to Grace Park did not only contain information about Victor Lim. It contained enough about Jae-hwan too. Enough for a prosecutor with ambitions and awaiting indictment to know exactly what to do. Sun-hee did not give her a weapon against Lim. Sun-hee gave her a bomb. And Aaliyah, who thought she was finally learning the game, walked it into a federal building and detonated it herself. Jae-hwan is in custody. The man who built a cage around her voice and called it protection, cold-eyed, powerful, the only person who was ever between her and the abyss, is gone. Sun-hee did not call to explain. Sun-hee did not call at all. Aaliyah stands alone in the penthouse, a signed cooperation agreement in a federal building. A criminal on the phone who knows what she did. And Tayo coming home tomorrow to a mother who just made the worst mistake of her life by believing someone in this family was offering her a gift. There are no gifts here. There is only leverage, and she just used all of hers. Tell me you saw that coming. Tell me. Drop it in the comments right now, if you didn't. You need to share this story with everyone you know. We are one chapter away from the ending that is going to absolutely break you. Subscribe if you haven't. Like this video. Come back for the finale, because Aaliyah is not done yet. Chapter 4. The bottom does not look the way she expected. She expected darkness. She expected paralysis, the kind that comes when the floor disappears and there is nothing beneath it. She expected to stand in the kitchen of a penthouse that has never been hers and simply stop functioning, the way a machine stops when the power cuts. What she gets instead is clarity. It arrives at 10:47 in the evening. Aaliyah, 28 years old, dark brown skin, long purple braid loose against her back, spiral tattoo on her right shoulder catching the city light, stands at the floor-to-ceiling penthouse window looking out at a city that does not know her name or her story. The clarity arrives not as warmth or comfort, but as cold surgical precision. The same quality she has watched Jae-won, the imposing Korean man in his 30s with short-cropped black hair and a cold, calculating gaze, carry through every room he has entered. She used to think that quality was born in him, a trait of the powerful, something requiring a criminal empire and a Korean surname, and a lifetime of being the most dangerous person in any space. She understands now she was wrong. That quality is not born. It is forged. It is what happens when a person loses enough, survives enough, stands at the bottom of enough holes looking up at the people who dug them. It is what happens to a refugee with purple hair and a spiral tattoo and a voice kept locked for 6 years, standing alone at night with a federal cooperation agreement and absolutely nothing left to protect except one thing no one has taken: her mind. She opens her laptop and lays out what she has the way Jaewon lays out assets. Clinical, unsentimental, column by column. She has public trust. 2 weeks of press coverage framing her as a sympathetic figure, a gifted mother, a cultural voice discovered at the Gala. For journalists have her direct contact. A social media presence his PR team built in 11 days with 340,000 followers. Watching her story, she has knowledge. 11 months inside the Hwan family. Account locations, names of allies, the structure of loyalties, the way Sun Hee operates, and the specific shape of Sun Hee's miscalculation, which is the same miscalculation every person in this family keeps making. They keep underestimating what a woman will do when her child is in danger. She has a phone number for Grace Park, a federal prosecutor ambitious enough to want this case bigger than Victor Lim. Park wanted Lim. Park got Jaewon as a bonus. But Park needs convictions, which means Park needs her star witness. The woman who delivered the drive, whose immigration status is now tied to federal cooperation. To remain credible and extremely useful, Aaliyah has leverage over a federal prosecutor. She did not know that until right now. She also has a question. Grace Park moved within 6 hours of receiving the drive. That is not the speed of a prosecutor who found unexpected evidence and pivoted. That is the speed of someone whose case was already built and waiting for one final piece. Sun Hee did not give her a bomb. Sun Hee gave her a key, and Park already had the door, which means Sun Hee and Grace Park have been in communication. The takedown of Jaewon was not improvised. Aaliyah was the designed mechanism of a plan that predates her involvement by months. Sun Hee needed a clean source with no criminal exposure. Someone credible, someone the defense could not discredit as a mob plant. Sun Hee spent 11 months finding exactly the right woman to marry her son. The clarity sharpens into something with an edge. She calls Grace Park's direct line. It rings for times. Park answers on the 5th, Mrs. Won. No surprise in the voice, only attention. I want to talk about the indictment, Aaliyah says. Specifically how long you had the case built before I walked into your office this morning. Silence, precise and revealing. I also want to talk about Sun Hee Choi. Aaliyah continues, keeping her voice level. She learned that from a man currently in a federal holding cell. Her role in the cooperation between your office and the Hwan family over the past 14 months. And then what my continued cooperation is worth to you, given that your case requires a very sympathetic, credible, publicly beloved witness to survive the defense strategy his legal team is about to deploy. Where are you right now? Park says. Home. Aaliyah says, but we should meet tomorrow, before Tayo comes home. Because after he is home, my priorities shift, and you will find me significantly less available. Bring Sun Hee's file. I know you have one. It is time to talk about what happens to the woman who actually orchestrated this, not only the man who got arrested for it. She hangs up. She opens her laptop and drafts 3 emails. One to each journalist who covered the gala. Subject line identical in all 3. Exclusive. The story behind the story. Available for comment. On my terms. She does not send them. She saves them as drafts. She needs Park to know they exist. She closes the laptop She sleeps for hours. She does not dream. The meeting is at 7 in the morning in a diner 6 blocks from the Federal Building. A location Aaliyah chose because it is public, ordinary, and impossible to surveil without being noticed. She is there first, ordering coffee. 28 years old, dark brown skin, purple braid pinned up, spiral tattoo on her right shoulder visible above her grey wool coat. The waitress brings coffee without a second glance. Park arrives at 7:03. She orders nothing. "You did your homework fast," Park says. "I had a long night," Aaliyah says. "The Sun-Hee connection is complicated," Park says. "She cooperated with this office independently. Her terms are separate and cannot be fully disclosed." "I am not asking for full disclosure," Aaliyah says. "I want to know whether the charges against J1 hold without my testimony." Park is still. "I think the charges are real, but circumstantial without a cooperating witness. Who can speak to the internal structure of the family?" Aaliyah says. "His legal team will file a suppression motion within 48 hours. That motion succeeds if the drive source is not independently verified by someone whose testimony is unimpeachable." She looks at Park. "That someone is me." "You're describing leverage," Park says. "I'm describing reality," Aaliyah says. "You need me. I need things." Park recalibrates. Aaliyah can see it. The same silent arithmetic she has watched on J1's face in business calls. A person adjusting their model of who they are dealing with. "What do you want?" Park says. "Sun-Hee Choi charged," Aaliyah says. "Her immunity covers her cooperation. It does not cover 14 months spent building a plan to use me as an instrument to arrest her own son. That is conspiracy. That is witness manipulation. I want those charges pursued." She pauses. "And I want it formally on record that my husband's arrest resulted from his mother's scheme and my unwitting participation." When J1's legal team finishes the suppression motion, their next argument will be that the evidence was planted by a cooperating spouse. "I will not have my name used that way." "You want to protect him," Park says. Surprised. "I want the truth on record," Aaliyah says. "I am not going to be the lie they use to convict him. If he goes down, it will be on real evidence. I will not be the instrument his mother built." Park thinks for a long time. "Yes," Park says finally. "I can work with that." What happens next takes 11 days and is not dramatic the way television makes things dramatic. It is phone calls, document filings, and a media campaign Aaliyah runs from the penthouse. 3 journalists, a publicist hired with the emergency account J1's financial manager confirms is available to the legal spouse, and a carefully placed interview in which she discusses the video for the first time. The lullaby, the candle, a mother and a sick child, and 14 seconds that became a story people wrote for her without asking what actually happened. The interview is watched by 6 million people in 48 hours. The suppression motion is denied. Aaliyah's testimony on how she received the drive from a named one family member, she names Sun-Hee on day 4, is corroborated by phone records Park's team already had. Sun-Hee's immunity does not cover conspiracy against a federal investigation. Sun-Hee is charged on day 9. She goes quiet in a way she was not built to be quiet. Aaliyah, watching the news from the penthouse kitchen, feels something that is not quite satisfaction and not quite grief. The feeling of a woman who has stopped being a pawn and has not yet decided what piece she wants to be. On day 10, Tayo comes home, pale-skinned, black-haired, dark-eyed, the prominent black vein on his small arm. He walks through the door with his knowing gaze and his dinosaur backpack, and holds onto Aaliyah's waist without letting go for a very long time. On day 11, the charges against Jae-won are restructured. 3 counts reduced to 1, the count the evidence genuinely supports. His legal team and Park's office reach a framework. He will not be in federal custody indefinitely. On day 11, he comes home. She is at the kitchen counter with tea when she hears the elevator. Tayo is asleep in his room, honed to days now, sleeping with a nightlight, the prominent black vein on his arm visible above his small blanket, a dinosaur encyclopedia tucked under his pillow. He has an unshakable faith that his mother will be there in the morning. Aaliyah has decided that faith is the only thing in her life she will never negotiate with anyone. She hears the elevator and does not move. She waits. Jae-won fills the doorway. The imposing Korean man in his 30s, powerful build, short-cropped black hair, cold calculating eyes. But something in the surface has shifted. 11 days in federal custody at the intersection of a criminal indictment and a family betrayal does something even to a man built like this. The expensive dark suit is wrinkled for the first time she has ever seen it. He looks at her the way he looked at her after the gala. Not with surprise, with recognition. "You knew," he says. "Not at first," she says. "By the time I went to Park's office, I knew enough." She puts her tea down. "I didn't know what was on the drive. Your mother told me it was against Lim. I should have verified that before I handed it over. That was my mistake." "You organized the media campaign," he says. "Yes." "You named my mother in your testimony." "Yes." He walks to the counter and stands 3 feet from her. The powerful frame, the suit wrinkled, the cut on his left hand healing badly. She always looks at his hands. "You structured your testimony in a way that prevented the spousal cooperation argument," he says, "which was the only thing that would have made the primary charges stick. The charges that stick are the ones the evidence supports. Nothing more." He looks at her for a long time. "Why?" "Not how. Not what were you thinking. Why?" "Because I am not your mother," she says. "I do not move people like pieces. If you go down, it will be for something you actually did, not something she engineered and I delivered." She meets his eyes. And because Tayo needs his father to not have been framed, even a father who is what you are, something moves in his face. The shift she has been watching for 11 months, the thing underneath the cold calculation she could never name clearly enough. He reaches into his jacket pocket and places a small folded piece of paper on the counter. She looks at it without touching it. "Open it," he says. She unfolds it. A handwritten confession, 3 paragraphs in his precise script. How he knew about her voice before the marriage. How he obtained recordings she made at the conservatory 6 years ago on a server she believed was deleted. How he identified her as a potential asset before the marriage contract was proposed. How the marriage was constructed around her, not offered to her. She has known this since the night of the gala, standing in the lights with his eyes on her. But she has never had it said, never had it admitted. He is saying it now, in writing, voluntarily, with no legal obligation and no strategic benefit. She turns the document over and checks the date. Day 3 of his custody, when she was running a media campaign to keep his charges from sticking. He wrote this on day 3. Why? She says, his own word back at him, because you asked me once, in this kitchen. If you were just convenient, he says, the cold eyes, the powerful build, the wrinkled expensive dark suit. I didn't answer. I want to answer now. You were not convenient. Nothing about you is convenient. You are the least convenient thing that has ever happened to me. I started with a calculation, he says. I do not end there. She folds the document and puts it in her pocket. She picks up her tea. She looks at him over the rim of the cup. This woman, 28 years old, dark brown skin, long purple braid, spiral tattoo on her right shoulder, and makes a decision that is either the bravest or the most reckless thing she has ever done. In her experience, those are often the same thing. New terms, she says. His eyes sharpen. The speed of his comprehension, one of the things that is genuinely true about him, is something she has decided to stop resenting and start using. No more information gaps, she says. You know something that affects me or Tayo? I know it. In real time. No calculations about what I can handle. In return, you know where I am and what I am doing. No surprises in either direction. Transparency, he says. Partnership, she says. If that word means anything in this house. He extends his hand, not for a handshake, for something more deliberate. The gesture of a man not accustomed to meeting equals deciding, right now, in this kitchen, to try. She takes his hand. He steps closer. The space maintained for 11 months with careful discipline closes. She is looking up at him, and he is looking down at her. And there is nothing convenient about this. Nothing calculated. Nothing that fits into a ledger or a contract clause. He kisses her. She lets him. It is not soft. It is not tentative. It is the kiss of two people who have been negotiating around this for 11 months and have finally run out of reasons to keep negotiating, and it tastes like something that was supposed to be a transaction becoming something that does not have a name yet. When she pulls back, she looks at the cut on his left hand, healing badly. She thinks of the night the video dropped. The contract she signed without reading the fine print. The night she decided survival and surrender were the same thing. She was wrong. Survival is this: standing in a kitchen you have decided to make yours, in a life that tried to make you a pawn, choosing the terms. Her phone buzzes on the counter. The message is from Grace Park. Your part of the deal is complete. Now mine. She looks at the message. She looks at Jaewon, the imposing Korean man with short-cropped black hair and cold, calculating eyes that have learned, in 11 days, to look at her differently. He is watching her face with the quality of a man who has decided that is acceptable. More than acceptable. She turns the phone face down. Your mother is going to be formally charged tomorrow morning, she says. I thought you should hear it from me. He is still. Then he nods once. Anything else? He says, yes. Aaliyah says, your cut needs to be properly cleaned. Where do you keep the first aid kit? He stares at her. Fourth cabinet. Left of the sink. She opens the cabinet and finds the kit. She cleans the cut on his hand while he stands at the counter of the kitchen where 11 months ago he told her she had no choice. She works with steady dark brown hands and does not look up at his face, and he does not speak. And the city glitters below them through the floor to ceiling glass. In the back bedroom, Tayo sleeps under a nightlight, pale-skinned, dark-eyed. The prominent black vein on his small arm, a dinosaur book beside him. The penthouse is quiet. For the first time, it feels like it might be hers. A woman accused of being a witch, a man who thought she was an asset, a mother who moved them both like pieces on a board, a marriage that started as a transaction and ended as the only real contract either of them ever signed. If this story wrecked you the way it was supposed to, I need you to do 3 things right now. Hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it means everything. Drop a comment below and tell me, was Aaliyah right to forgive him, or did she just make her most dangerous deal yet? And share this video with someone. Text it, post it, send it anywhere. Because stories like this deserve an audience bigger than one. Subscribe if you have not. There are more stories where this came from, and the next one will hit harder.